I had an idea of what poems I was going to read. Of course, Steve, you did an excellent job. I don't know how I can really follow up with that Viking poem with the boy. That was amazing. But since Cord brought up Ellie Wiesel, I think I'll go ahead and read a poem from Red Flag and Other Poems. It's my first book, and I donate the proceeds to the Candles Holocaust Museum in Terre Haute, Indiana. It was ran by Eva Moses Core, who was an Auschwitz survivor. She passed away in 2019, and they are, especially after the pandemic, definitely in need of support. This is one of the poems that I sent to Elie Wiesel back in 2016, and it is called When Wiesel Came Back from Auschwitz, He Came Back as a Bird. He came back as a bird whose mother's daughter was slaughtered along with her, and the remainder thrown in the gas chamber. He came back as a black crow, black from the smoke that choked those stuck in the cage just east of Germany. He came back as a pigeon, no longer with the fat that was taken away from far few rations of molded grain still hated. He came back as a finch, and although the stench of death and decay would be hard to wash away, he had hope for better days. He came back as a dove, having learned to rise above the hatred and discrimination. He became a symbol of peace for every nation. He came back as a phoenix, for although his soul had turned to ash, he came back again and again with a renewed will to live. And so that poem kind of entered a seed into my theory of birds being like messengers or reincarnations of people that we lose. I put out two books today. One of them's called "Cacophony of Birds in the House of Dread" from Between Shadows Press. That poem was also made it in there, but this one I have a fascination with cardinals. I this game back here is Wingspan, and I have a little cardinal, but I got my wrong arm. Got my mom tattooed on me yesterday. She passed away on May 3rd last year, and I always associate the cardinal with her, and so that's why I added the cardinal. But this poem is called "When the Cardinal Comes to Visit." It is said that when a loved one crosses planes of consciousness and enters their new form, they occasionally come back as a bird. Cardinals are commonly chosen hosts, for their red feathers are stark in the gray skies which cover the lives of those in mourning. Like a little girl tossed around among the crowd, the cardinal fights its way through for a glimpse and to deliver a message from beyond the treetops. I hang special seed to attract only these kinds so I can feel my deceased one's presence nearby whenever doing my best seems hard. Several states share the cardinal as their official bird to be treasured by all who watch with scopes. We remain in eternal mourning in the Midwest. So I'm always looking for my special bird. I My other book that came out today, I was crazy to put out these two books at the same time, but Ghost Map. And I often write either on mental health or the Holocaust loss, but I'm venturing out. But I thought it worked out that these books came out right before the anniversary of my mom's passing. She passed away from brain cancer last year, and so that's kind of affected my thought process lately. But let's see. I'll go ahead and just narrow it down to one. So this is the last section of the poem in the book. Let's see. Simple reminders take me to a scene where the ghosts I love are still with me. I see them in dreams, and I see them when I blink. A cut bologna sandwich smells like taking care of mom. Oh, how she used to take care of me all the times I was ever in need. These triggers are enough to make a man lose it if he isn't prepared for the emotion. 26 years will never be enough time, but I'd rather have that than 100 with anyone else. Some people live their whole lives never getting a fraction of this love. So yeah, the ghost map kind of is my pinpointing of recollecting places where people die that I care about. And I've lost a lot of people in my short time frame, but I'm thankful for the people I have left. Um, as Cord had mentioned, I'm the president of Midwest Writers Guild here in Evansville, Indiana. So we're south near Kentucky, but we have a chapbook series that we put out this year, and I'm one of them. When no one was ready, I went and cranked out some poems to put out. But this is my book, Checking Tickets on OUMAUMUA. And you guys can find out anything about my books on my website at timheerdink.com. I'll link that later if you're interested. This is the starting poem. It's called A Summoning. I'm very much interested in space, and so this book is all on space. In the calm stillness of a third Tuesday's denouement, after a gathering with like-minded fellows at the Boca, to jive and shout about what makes us completely tick, while flat screens entertain with sports recaps for those who'd rather down good drink and a bite of two instead of hearing the sound permeating from upon the stage. A frigid force caresses me as I traverse my front yard so I can collect waste, of which we hope they dispose. Some unknown influence coerces me to look upward, and I happen to spot the Big Dipper directly above, with its handles placed at the left with other lights from constellations circling in its distant company. There's no telling how long I must have stood and stared. I couldn't break myself free of this mysterious hold, like a hypnotized participant stuck in the depths of a trance. Down the street, a wave circling around the neighborhood, soft tones start to reverberate within the atmosphere, and a pattern of four notes remaining in repetition. Do, 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 do. Eyes fixated only on the plethora of stars before me, there's a sensation that I'm not really in my body, that something is calling for my isolated attention. Its face returns to gaze as movement returns to my limbs. The music has stopped for the time being, but I can't help to think that maybe we're not alone in this great catastrophe we all seem to find ourselves. So I try to do some different stuff. I'm not going to read any of this one, but I do have a cool one on sailing. The guy's lost at sea and all that, and here's the Sirens Call. So that kind of also ties in with that summoning. One that a lot of people have liked lately from my book that came out in December, Razed Monuments, is my latest Holocaust book, where I donate proceeds to the museum. This one's called I Am Not a Jew. I am not a Jew, but a Hoosier Protestant turned agnostic due to my state of confusion as of late. I am not a Jew, my response when asked why I care so much when it comes to the Holocaust. My rebuttal, how can one care so little? Jews weren't the only ones targeted for their identity. Homosexuals, gypsies, the disabled, Soviets, and political opponents also fell at the command of Hitler. I am not a Jew, nor am I with the Nazis. Coming from Dutch descent, I am the fruit of men who left to cross the Atlantic back in the 1850s. Even with a hint of German mixed in with the rest, I can only feel guilt if I choose to let the memory of millions who have perished flicker out and pass with closed lips. No, I am not a Jew, but I stand for anyone who needs a voice and a hand. The Holocaust shall never be forgotten. We must always remember what we've done and stop the forces that be before it happens again. I'm very passionate on the Holocaust. I even went to Auschwitz and Dachau, and I've seen Schindler's Factory, and so I've met Eva a number of times. And I even in Razed Monuments, I have a poem from Stephen Nasser, who's another Holocaust survivor. He lives in Nevada. There's not so many of those survivors left, and so it's important to keep that in conversation because you have to be vigilant. I haven't eaten one. 55. My first full length. I guess I have a lot of chapbooks, but my full length is called The Human Remains, and it's got a variety in there. This one is called Why They Call It a Shoot. There once was a time where death came with a bang, stemming from the smoke of the unholstered barrel straight into your thick, flubbery gut, so you can bleed out or be consumed from infection. One didn't have to be such a great marksman back in those days. Air brought its own weapons to the table before modern medicine came with its cures. Not everyone likes their picture taken. It's bad luck, my brother-in-law would tend to say as he covers his face from the snapping screens, which already seem to be out and ready. Photographs lack the importance they held in the past. A portrait well prepared by a professional with a busting bulb takes more effort than wonky expressions pretending to be happiness for nobody but the cloud to see. Smiles are forced for the quick flash because each shot taken takes another little piece of identity until eventually there's nothing left but dead eyes staring forward like a phantom from the past. And I think I might read. I don't know how much time I got. I like to go with the flow, and so I like to think I have an idea of what's going on, and I just go with it. All right, yeah, I think I'll do two more from the birds, and maybe I'll call it a day. Sometimes I get long-winded, but if I had a reading series that I was doing before the pandemic at the Arts Council here in downtown Evansville, and pandemic messed that all up. I'm glad to be here doing the Zoom thing, and I can't wait to meet more people in person when things are getting back to normal and on the road again. So, but yeah, be sure to check out Between Shadows Press if you're not familiar with it. This is some neat chapbooks. This one is called Reemergence, and then I'll have that tie into the last main poem for this book. Reemergence. Common thought that death is not the final act in these play of plays. Some agree on an everlasting heaven where our cup always overflows. Others believe energy flows out and into a renewed living being. I told my dad my theory with birds, how he may become flying messengers. As we watch a pigeon defecate on our cars, he has only one thing to say to me. If I ended up returning as one of those, you'd probably shoot me down. And finally, the House of Dread, the place where this cool bird, Glenn Chadbourne, he's the illustrator for a lot of Stephen King's work, including an illustrated edition of Cujo coming out in the next year or so. He did this really awesome bird, so I appreciate that. This one's called The House of Dread. There's a condemned house at the top of the hill and a forgotten town nestled between fields, lost in the blur known as the Midwest. Each window hugged tightly by rotted planks, nailed down and abandoned long before dust consumed the once vibrant homestead. A malnourished roof caved in, allow skylight and shine through the darkness kept track within hollow walls. I break down traveling along the highway, get lost in the back roads, even the locals seem to have erased from their memory. The road called for me after my mother died, but the world closed its doors on visitors, so I wandered aimlessly, searching for a God. Becoming agnostic doesn't just happen overnight. When you've been raised a certain way your whole life, it's a gradual erosion of faith from the waters of doubt. In years past, I held the title of paranormal investigator until demons started following me home, like a predator stalking its oblivious prey right before it gets ugly. Now, it appears that all my efforts have brought me to this dump of which I must explore, for the wind whispered my name so softly as I walked by. You know, no matter how much time has passed, the sound of your mother's voice doesn't leave you. And when she calls for you, it's best to answer. A male cardinal sits perched on a post so stark and beautiful with its red feathers standing out against the blank canvas. I never truly understand why males are much better on the eyes than the females of that species. There's also irony in associating a male with a female creator, but like I said, I never claimed to have the answers. Overgrown weeds brush the skin of my legs as I forge my path toward a structure long after it became organized debris. Narrowing the gap between me and the front porch, my cardinal flies into the ajar entryway where a strange new sound roars. I run after it, hoping to discover what was taken from me in my time before the road. Busting through a curtain of cobwebs, 1,000 birds sing their songs like some sort of choreographed celebration. Many different kinds going every which way from the warped floorboard to the busted ceiling with more excitement than I've ever witnessed. This must be the place we go once the line goes flat and our humanity is no more. A marvelous wonder of experience, just as the rotting boards give away from under me and I begin to fall. Thank you.